Hello, everyone. My name is Rafael, and I would like to welcome everyone to another episode. I just want to we're going to talk about headshots as always. So today I have a special guest, Vail Fucci. She's an amazing headshot photographer. I tried to look up about your history. How did you get into this whole business? And I found out, and we talked a little bit before, you have PhD in biotics, which is
Bioethics.
bioethics. Sorry.
That's okay. It's unusual. So
Yeah, I'm trying to read this because it's kind of long story about your how did you like how did you even get into the headshot photography? So you're a scientist, and we talk a little bit about it that you decided to change career, and after you got your PhD, you decided, okay, I want to be a photographer. So let's unpack. We have a lot of stuff to talk about it. I definitely want to focus on your headshots because they are incredible.
thank you.
You are also called, your nickname is a headshot doctor, which I think
That's right.
fits, your education. So let's start with discussing how even you get into photography. We talked a little bit about it before we kind of kick this off. So you have an interesting story. So if you don't mind, share it a little bit. How did you get into this whole industry?
Absolutely happy to. So when I was much younger, I actually have right here my very first camera that when I was 8, my mom gave this to me with it there. And it didn't even have a functioning light meter. I had to just go by, rules of like Sunny 16 with film back in the day. And I absolutely loved it with it there. But at the same time, when I was 6, I was an unusual child. I decided I was going to get a PhD at that point. So I was very much focused on science, but at the same time, as time went on through high school, I was the photo editor of our yearbook. I was the thing I was known for was the girl who would do anything to get a shot. So I mostly focused on a lot of the sports photography at that point. So if it was, say I was doing the diving photos, they would have me get up and I'd be on the high dive next to the other high dive and taking shots of them as mid-air with that. Or, if it was the crew team, I'd be laying down flat in the boat with the coach there so I could get mist of the water, coming up. So that still goes to today. You'll do anything for the shot, practically. And then in college, did a little bit of like the school paper that was there, but I was doing engineering, and the amount of time that took was just an inordinate amount of time at that point, back in the film days with it there. So while I didn't stay continuing on the paper there, I still, at least all my electives were in photography and graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing was, back then, my mom, at that point, I remember at one exam I didn't do well on at all. And I was telling her, and she said, I don't know what you're doing with this thought of like being a scientist and PhD. I really see you being a photographer. And I was like, what are you telling me? Who tells their daughter who wants to be a scientist, you should be a photographer? You could even drop out of school, and do this now. So I stuck on the path of keeping on going and did bioengineering undergrad and then bioethics for my PhD, and then worked in scientific and regulatory affairs in DC and lobbying group of pharma there. And at first, I felt like I was making an impact, serving my country and people and making things better. But then, as we all know, DC's politics have gotten pretty crazy, and it didn't feel like I could do much good at that point with it there. And so my husband could see I wasn't really thrilled. And so he surprised me. Our Christmas 2009, his big present to me was, I open it up and it's a leather portfolio and it says Fucci's Photos, LLC. And I'm like, what's this? You open it up, it's like IRS documents and stuff. And he's like, oh, it's your own photography business. I think this is really what you're meant to do. And I was like, literally just finished my PhD, but I think you're actually probably right. And I'm so thankful he did, because I don't think I ever would have been brave enough to do that on my own. Because overall, I had defined myself for so much of my life as like, I'm a smart science person, like type of thing. And you put in that many years of school and stuff there to kind of just go, I'm going to throw it all to the wind is a lot. So where he kind of got the idea of that was that it was the same age where all our friends were getting married. And so when I'd be in a bridal party, I would take pictures at their wedding. And then as it turned out, several of them ended up saying, "Oh, wow, your pictures are really good." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." They're like, "No, like so good that I'm having our wedding photographer put some of the ones you took in our album." And I was like, "That's probably kind of rude to your photographer, but I'm flattered with it there." So he at least had an inkling of where that was going. So it was funny. At that point, he was like, "Okay, now I don't want you to, we won't get a business loan. We can do $2,000 of our own money for a starting thing." And I was like, "I don't even have that $2,000 won't even get me a camera." He's like, "You have a camera." It was literally a Rebel XSI,
Mhm.
like the kit lens with it there. I was like, that's not a professional camera. He's like, "You take beautiful pictures with it. I don't see why you can't use that." And I was like, "Okay, fair point." So I started with that, and initially every piece of thing that I did with every gig, the money just went to
Right.
getting more gear. So I literally started out with $50 an hour doing a wedding in, no joke, someone's basement, in their home basement, because it was a couple that was Indian, and she was from India. He was from America, but they needed to make sure they were going to have their great big wedding over in India with it there, but have the small, like, legal one that they needed. But they still wanted pictures and some traditional aspects there. So it was right in the home. So that was my very first wedding experience. And then it was gyms and stuff like that, church basements. And then within, I end up second shooting, which for anybody who still does want to get into weddings that's watching this, that is the way to really smartly go into things, is always go get yourself a mentor, get somebody who really knows what they're doing to, and that really leveled up my skill when shooting with it was a man named Daniel McGarity who really just made a difference in my shooting there. And then once I was making enough with weddings, didn't need to stay in the DC area anymore. And my husband was from the Watertown, Boston area. And so I said, "Let's do it. Let's move." So we moved up. And then, as luck would have it, one of the bridesmaids of a wedding that I shot with Daniel down there in DC was in the Boston area and getting married. And so that was my first wedding up here. And it just massively took off from there. And it was amazing to go from like little next to nothing to, let's see, that was 2010 when we moved up here. By 2013, the CBS Boston named us best wedding photographer of the top 5 best wedding photographers in Boston. So it was kind of meteoric to see the difference there. So that was how I first got into it.
So what was the process of switching from weddings to headshots? Because again, we have a little bit of discussion, and I went for exactly the same process. I started with weddings, and I had the same kind of experience that I started with like 4 weddings a season, and then it's just like completely took off. And I think what is fascinating with weddings, the word of mouth is like the biggest drive for, if you shoot a couple weddings and people love it, they're gonna start talking about you, and all of a sudden you're just booked for the whole year or whatever.
Absolutely.
But I guess something happened. We talk a little bit about it, but if you could share, how did you switch into the headshots? Because this is again something very fascinating that a lot of people like, "Oh, I've been shooting weddings for whatever X amount of years. Headshots, it's something easy." Well, everyone can do headshots, right? And then you get into this, and it's just like, okay, this is like a completely different.
It's just like, yes, everyone can shoot weddings, everyone can shoot headshots. Not everyone can do it well with it. And that's the funny thing, is that we all kind of go into weddings first because that's what it's, to this day. Anytime when I say, "What do you do?" and I say I'm a photographer, they say, "Oh, like you shoot weddings?"
Yes.
I'm like, no, that's the very first thing that anybody thinks of. And it's the same thing if you ask somebody, if you're an attorney, they go, "Oh, are you in court?" And it's like, no, like there's so many different things that people can do. And weddings are actually one of the more challenging things to shoot. You have to be good at so many different aspects of stuff there, not to dissuade people from getting into it. But for me, with it there, I ended up having my children. And so with that, a couple things. One happened in my first pregnancy. I had a fall, and so I actually completely messed up my pelvis. So being able to lug heavy things and be like going around like running like a maniac on a wedding day was really hard for me to continue doing with it there. And then once I had my second child, I was the main caregiver for our children there. My husband was working full time there, and we said, we're able to do this. Let me take the time off from weddings and take care of the kids. Well, then once I started try to get back into it, just like you said, first of all, the word of mouth is powerful. You go and from being the absolute tip top, but then you don't do weddings for, 5+ years. Now you're back to almost square one with it there. So that was the start. And then of me thinking about getting out of it. And then additionally, it took up all my weekends completely. And once you start to have little ones of all the different things that they have during the week, it's the weekends is when you're wanting to be there with them and you have to shuttle them around to all sorts of stuff. So going and being away for 10+ hours on a weekend just didn't make a lot of sense. So as it happened, I stumbled into headshots, is the way I'd put it. At my children's school, one of the things I did in the meantime was I was volunteering my services to the school for all sorts of photos there for like their annual report, etc. So their head of advancement for it's like getting donations for the school. Her daughter happened to be a realtor and needed new headshots. And she said, "Can you do headshots?" I said, "I've never done it before, but I could try." So I promptly got on Creative Live and bought Gary Hughes's course. and yeah, like we all did. And thank God for Creative Live back in the day. And thank you, Gary. So I watched that and got myself my softbox, got set up, of doing the basics there. And the way I always would approach whenever I do something new is that I would tell people, you only have to pay me if you end up liking the images, because I didn't want to make someone feel like you have to and it's a first time out there. But thankfully, she really liked it, and clearly so did I. It was amazing to be able to, one of my favorite things when I'd be shooting weddings is I would always budget in time to get those beautiful. Let's see, did we lose me? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
I'm back. With it there. Yeah, although it seems like I'm flipped now. Should I reflip the direction, or no, it doesn't matter?
Oh, you're good. It
okay.
Looks good on my end, yeah.
All right, that's all that matters. Yeah, so where were we? We were talking weddings, yes, and that. So I always loved to do the portrait type of thing that was going on there, having that planned out. But I would even bring, the off-camera flash to get the beautiful light, etc. Bring a softbox on there. To be able to then have my own time and not have the wedding clock running us on the back there, and be able to take the pictures I wanted to. It was amazing to have that element of control on the light, and the whole situation was just phenomenal. So I said, sign me up for headshots.
So I have a question for you regarding the transition. How did you go? Because I don't know, like, what was your approach to weddings? But in my case, I was shooting like natural light. Like, I never used strobes. I never used any soft boxes. This was completely, something out of my sight. And I never even thought about it using any of those, because I was like, weddings were just, you go in and you just try to capture whatever is happening. So how your transition looked like going from weddings into the studio, right? Because that's what it is. Did you struggle with this? Did you had a good, some kind of I don't know, learning process, or you were, because now I know you're shooting with the Peter Hurley kind
system and type of thing. Yeah, for sure.
So step right in your career.
Yeah. And it makes me laugh when I go back to like my first wedding of looking with flash versus then later, and I just I'm kind of aghast, and I'm like, oh, this is painful to look at. But it was, again, a lot of Creative Live. The hosts and the people knew me by name by the end. They'd be like, oh, Vail's on now, she's in the Are we back? Yeah, there we are. Yeah, back in college, there was next to no use of strobes or anything there. So I was learning as I was going along, purely from that aspect of it there. And then once I started doing the headshots in conjunction with the weddings, then I would even bring I started with strobes for the headshots. I'd bring the strobes onto the weddings and do the group photos and stuff using that, because that was even better then. So
yeah. So let's go back to the headshots. So then you started slowly transitioning into the headshot photography. So tell me a little about the process of learning headshots, because that's something
Sure.
a lot of people are interested in, especially those ones who are getting in. How this process look like? Yeah, because like I know over the years things are not only the technology are just changing, but also our way of seeing things, and then kind of like building this style of the type of headshots which we like. Because like even in my case, like I when I look at the first few years, like I'm not saying I cannot even look at those pictures, but what I'm trying to say is it was a process of learning, right?
Sure.
I just want to talk a little about how this whole thing look on your end.
Sure. So the very start was with that basic Gary Hughes class. And then once I'd exhausted any of the things that they had on Creative Live on it, I had like a little taste of Peter's one, but it wasn't. Peter's Creative Live class is not indicative of like his, like once you're part of Headshot Crew at all, of the amount that you learn from it there. So I got the basics. I mean, truly the basics at the very beginning from that bit there. Then I went online and was searching different things. I found Mr. Ruffal's page there on Headshots on Facebook. Tried to take note of everything that you had in there. I was really overall impressed with the stuff there. And that's how I got to know, be on the group and be doing this right now, was just of being a member of your Facebook group. And I actually have found that while a fair bit of Facebook groups are, trolls and just being mean to people, of being overly critical of stuff that comes in, there are those gems of people who sit there and will give you true constructive criticism, useful stuff. And remember that we all started somewhere. I try to pay it forward and be that person, even on a lot of things now, of try when I can to go in there and give that help to people. So I ended up going through and still just kind of stuck with that all the way up until the pandemic. And then when the pandemic happened, right before that, I had really started to just hone in and say, headshots are the thing for me. And then had to close down everything with the pandemic. And then Sal Sincata had a thing called Glitch, where it was Sal, Vanessa Joy, and Peter were on there. And Peter ended up giving like I don't remember if it was a week or a month free. It was probably a month free at the time of Headshot Crew membership. And I said, well, I thought about doing this, but I never had the time with it there. So I said, now's as good a time as any when we have all this time here. So I joined Headshot Crew at that point. And that was massively transformative for me with it there, because instead of having just of a text feedback and stuff, of having a group of people that their mindset is solely focused on headshots, and that it's concentrating on the minutia of things with it there, like down to, well, yes, there's the lighting, and that it's the things of realizing of like, oh yep, you don't want hair splayed on the side of someone's shoulder, looking for every little thing, the teaching of posing with that. So that was for me personally the most transformative part for teaching with me. If you just join and don't do the, like, they have contests, but it's realistically, it's more like you're getting a critique from Peter Hurley with it, or one of the mentors of stuff there. You have to have some thick skin with it there. It's often kind of given with a bit of salt, not sweet with it there, but it's because he wants you to get better quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There we're back. Yeah, I never in my life would have expected that I'd be making like 3 to 4 times what I was ever making with weddings.
Yes.
Connection issues. There we go. Yeah, I have more work than there are hours in the day to do it. So I'm relying heavily more and more on AI stuff to help me with it there, to make things easier and less time consuming as best I can. But it's been a phenomenal, crazy ride.
So let's go into the AI, because as you probably know, and everyone who is following my work, people know I'm kind of crazy about it a little bit, and it's been a kind of new transformation for headshots. So, what is your take on AI? Because I know, based on even what I'm seeing online, and people just like arguing back and forth, there's massive group which are all for it because this can really transform what we do and speed up a lot of those processes which are time consuming. But there's the other side of people who are just completely against it. So how you look at AI, and what is your take on this whole new technology? Just like literally, it's not even knocking on the door; it's already here,
It's
right?
here. It's
Yeah,
here.
and then you
Um,
gonna use it or
Yes, I definitely use it, and each day I find more uses for it. Even things I wouldn't have ever expected, like using ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT all the time for stuff now, and I can talk about even of using that. But the um, the thing where I could see it being tough is that, for us as photographers for eons and eons, people just want to use your image and not be paying for it. So seeing the thing of having AI be trained on images without people technically giving their permission to that, I could see how that is a tricky wicket of sticking the things out there. No one asked to have their images used for those things and the training there. But I'm of the thing of, I'm trying to think of the term, the things out of the box already, like it's out, the genie's out of the bottle with it there, of that. I don't think we can find a way to go back and put it back in and say like, oh, well, let's make rights and reparations to back to people of it there. Reparations, that's the word, with it. I don't think that's going to happen with it. And it's a matter of learning to go forward in the world that we're in now instead of looking back with it. So for me, the ways in which I use it tremendously, where it makes a massive difference for me, is Evoto is the biggest one for me for using for retouching. But I just started this week of using it for tethering purposes. Even I usually would tether into Capture One with it, but with this, of being able to have it in real time, make the person look exactly as we would want them with the retouch anyway, it's bonkers. Because I mean, both it saves me time because then you're not even going like, well, what will this look like in the retouch? Will I really be able to fix this or not? But at the same time, my sense is that people are going to be buying more images if you're doing it on the structure of doing, like, my structure of my sessions is that there's a session fee and then per image fee. So if they're seeing already images that look stunning of themselves, exactly the way they would want, they're way more likely to purchase additional images. So that is a boon to me. It's just so much easier. It saves me the amount of time is
it's crazy. Yeah.
it's crazy, and it's so good. I could see, it doesn't. It's very easy to abuse and make it look, you could do stuff of making people look plastic, but most time, the way I at least use it, it doesn't. You would, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know, that it was done with it there.
100%.
So that's huge for me. The other aspect that I use a little less now because the hair retouching on Evoto is doing better, but was the Gen AI on in Photoshop of the sides of hair. So anytime, like, for example, I've got this space of blue here right now, like if I didn't get enough of filling there, of being able to go in and fill and make the hair look like real hair instead of me going and finding exactly a piece and going and warping and, doing that type of stuff. And seconds, there it is. And it's convincingly real. There are times where it looks really, really weird. And for some reason, Photoshop keeps randomly throwing in like a little tiny red balloon to me. I'm like, I don't know what AI taught it to do that. But otherwise, to me, it's tremendous. The thing of also, if someone absolutely hated their outfit, like for some reason, or the employer hated their person's outfit choice, can easily do a swap there of clothes and convincingly make it look real. So that's another way that I use it. I haven't ventured to do much of the thing of you doing the AI background replacement there. I think I don't know. I'd love to see how you personally do it, of making it look so well and seamless with it there. Sometimes people I've seen with composites people have done, I'm like, the lighting, it's why I always explain to clients when they want to do a composite of a background, you have to match the lighting on the subject to what your background is going to be, or else they're going to look like they're cut out and it's going to look weird.
Yeah,
So
there's so many avenues, but going back to the backdrops, that's one of the main differences, that AI can really analyze the lighting, and then you can implement the background which matches, because back in the days I used to do like tons of crazy stuff to just because you probably know, like I've been always crazy about, like, bringing those headshots to kind of like a different level, and just the backgrounds. I want to just kind of spice it up, those images, to make them look a little bit different.
It made it so that it was so signature that the instant anyone came up on my thing, I would know in a second it was your work, which was,
Oh, really?
yes, I'm always so impressed that in any second of seeing any of your pictures, I know exactly who did it. I was like, that's Rafal. It's amazing
Thank
to
you.
have such a defined style. So
Yeah, but going back to the AI, nowadays, as you said, AI can really well analyze the image, and I think because we are also like really detail oriented, we can see, like, even if you say about the hair, like 99% of people wouldn't even pay attention to this, but because we're doing so many of those headshots, like every little detail is like, we analyze it. Okay, this is gonna help the image to have this flow, whatever. So I also found that AI can really easily recognize those things as well right now, right? And the time saving, yeah, it's massive. I spent so much time retouching my images. It was just beyond belief. And then whenever I have those like big contracts, and I had to go for like tons of images, like I was just, sitting days and nights to retouch those shots. And now
yeah, it's saving me money because eventually I had so much work that I then was outsourcing it of that. But then what would happen is I'm particular enough about the actual image that then it would come back from my retoucher. And no matter how many times you'd sit there back and forth and try to help them understand, like, this is the style that I want, type of thing, it wouldn't be exactly me. There's only one of them, only one of me, it is what it is. That I was going, I'm now spending time retouching the images that I've already had retouched. Like, what is the point of this with it there? So this allows me to still have my hand in on the process, but at the same time, without the massive time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think now we can focus on other stuff, right? Which kind of, it's also fascinating that we can focus more on the business. We can focus on being more creative, or creating our own, like our own style of headshots, and like exploring different avenues. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I have exactly the same approach to AI. Interestingly, I was recently at the Canadian photography conference, and then I had this like a little speech there about AI, and it was funny because like everyone was terrified. Like I could see these people's faces, and they just like, you can see the fear, and everyone was like, "Oh, this AI is gonna take over. Our industry is gonna just completely ruin photography." But I'm personally optimistic. I think that AI will help us to, as you said, focus on different things, and just kind of like take care of all those things which were extremely time consuming. But we'll see. The time, I think, will show what's going to happen. I think it's already here, and there's no escape from it.
Yeah.
So we got to just take it as it is, and then go with the flow, and see which direction this whole thing is going to go.
Yeah,
So
I'd say where they have to, the people who have to fear it are the people who, if you're not excelling at your craft, it's the people that, the people that are going to be sucked away from it are the people who wouldn't have been paying a lot for their headshot to begin with. They're like, I have to get a headshot. They would have probably been the people that are going to go and spend, no more than $100 $150 on their headshot. They just truly are going, I just need it. This is what they tell me. And so, yeah, they're going to get an online AI headshot
yeah,
because they need that. But people can tell the difference in
yeah.
no time.
And I think AI cannot, well, at least at this point,
Not at this point. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to change eventually. But I think the AI cannot really, because AI is good, like, when it comes to the retouching. But the point what I'm trying to make, like, you have to have a good starting point image, and use AI to elevate it to the next
Yeah.
level. I think AI cannot take, you cannot have a bad image, and then, because I see all this like advertising, like, oh, just upload those few photos of yourself, some selfies, and the AI will do the magic, and it like looks like crap. Like, let's
Yeah.
be honest. So what I'm trying to say, like, you have to still have a good, starting point image, and that's where we are kind of come into place, because AI cannot really read the face expressions, the body language,
Yeah.
all this other stuff. So I think we still have a little bit of time to, I don't know, be in this industry and hopefully.
But I say always have a backup plan. When this did come about, I sat there with my husband. I was like, what if it does get really that good eventually? And then I thought to myself, what is it that AI can't do that we can do? So there's the element of covering events, and it doesn't just have to be weddings. And that's the other part that I do, is that I came to res corporate events, all these different things that go on there. AI is not going to like, you want to record the actual memory of what's happening going on with that. But you can still use stuff with AI to complement that. Like I use that Spot My Photos there, so that it goes and it's processing the images right as I'm taking them, so that the images go through and they're looking phenomenal as they come out, as if they've been processed by me sitting there at my computer, but it's looking stunning and people are getting the images in real time. So doing things like that as an additional pad on there, especially because the two of them, I don't know, Rafael, if you do this, but I do lots of high volume shoots of people, of going to conferences. And so those two different elements really kind of feed on each other. So you have the events that happen that are going along with that. And so if I'm out there shooting, then they'll say, oh, what else do you do? And I say headshots, and then that feeds on that. And if I'm out there doing headshots, they say, what else do you shoot? And I say events. So especially with corporate clients, the two kind of dovetail. So it's really incredibly useful for me. Having those two parts knit to it, and it goes back to the skills I had from weddings, but it's still on the time frame of not usually being weekends. It's most of the time during weekdays and stuff, with it there. So I do have my little backup plan type of thing there. I would like to think that we'll keep, the humanity going of having that with it, but at the same time, ride the wave as long as we can.
Yes, exactly. And it's not only affecting our industry, right? Because
Right.
like I've been also seeing it's getting implemented into other industries, like the attorneys, like accounting, everybody who
Yeah.
has jobs where AI can really make a huge difference. It's knocking on the door. So we're not the only ones who's going to be affected by it, but hopefully we can. I think the AI also can do a lot of good things, um, but I think the problem what I see is people kind of are scared of this unknown, right? Because we don't know which direction this whole thing is going. We just kind of pedaling along and trying to make best out of it, but the direction we don't truly. Because even like if you think about it, like if someone would tell you that you can retouch your image within like seconds, would be just like, that's just insane. And with this kind of precision as well, right?
Yeah.
Back in the days, all these filters were just like completely completely like useless, right?
Yeah.
So let's kind of switch the gears a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about your approach to headshot session in general, like how you
Sure.
work with clients, what's the process of kind of getting connected with them, because that's something I don't want to talk about the gear. Maybe we'll touch at some point, because this is something that like everyone I know from one hand wants to hear it, but this is, I think, I'm not saying it's the less important, but the way I see it, to have successful headshot session is just a connection with your clients. And I
Sure.
know you shooting some individuals, but also you shoot high volumes sessions where that you're going for, like, I don't know, hundreds of people. So tell me, like, how you work with those, like, individuals where you have a little bit more time to work with them, and how you work with clients where they come and go, and then you have to quickly connect with them, you have to get their shot
Absolutely.
if possible. So let's discuss this a little bit, and tell me a little about your experience, how you approach this whole thing.
Yeah. So that has always been my superpower, is what I would say. With it, I was always flattered when people would actually, when I was back even in weddings, when people would say, "Oh, I booked you because I first saw how beautiful your images were," as opposed to, "I saw what you were like at weddings," because they'd say to me, "You're the best wedding photographer I've ever seen." And I'm like, "You haven't literally even seen a picture. How would you like? The pictures can be terrible, like, of that." But so, um, of getting people to be comfortable is so huge, so
Mhm.
huge. The tricky thing I have is trying to translate that to lots of other photographers, because that's what I get from a lot of people. Would be like, "But I'm not bubbly crazy like you, Vail. I can't just be like, woo!" like of stuff. And I'm like, you don't have to. The most important thing I found more than anything is to have people feel heard, that you care about them in one way or another. And there are so many different ways you can express that. So when I first have it, if it's when it's an individual session, it's kind of like, much more amplified than what in the smaller one. The smaller one, it's like, like what can I connect really fast? But so with it here, if I'm doing an individual, what I have probably in the past 6 months ago started doing is that as soon as, because I actually get, probably at least 3/4, if not more, of my bookings directly online through people just finding me online with it there, through Google searches or Yelp. So with it, instead of them just going straight from making their appointment, showing up, and I've never even spoken to them, I have it now so that when they make their appointment, it automatically then populates it with a thing to make a phone call afterwards, so before their shoot, so that we can go through the process, make sure they also understand the pricing, because most people at first are sitting there going like, so $390 for the session and I get no images? Really? like some of them get it, but there's enough times that they'd be like, huh? So I like to make that very clear up front with it there. So we go through that. We talk about what it is that they want out of the session with it there. Why are they getting this picture taken? Is it just because their boss is telling them to, or is it because, they've got a big life change for themselves? Are they really proud because they lost a lot of weight and they want to show this off? Is it for dating profiles? That's another one that if you're a good headshot photographer, doing dating profiles, huge. You're both doing something that's tremendously useful and helpful for them and rewarding and so lucrative, because they most of the time need a lot of pictures for their profile. But yeah, so talking through as to what it is they want, what it is, if they already had a headshot, what don't they like about their old headshot, so that we make sure we don't do that same thing again with it. So they know those things in advance. I go over what to wear with them, that taken care of. So then when they come in the studio, usually I kind of go over it again just to make sure that I understand exactly what it is that they're going for. If it's particularly the finding out, if not just someone saying like, I'm in banking. Okay, what in banking do you do? Are you client facing? Are you sales? Are you finance? Are you data analyst? That type of stuff. I want to know for lots of reasons. One, I want to know what it is that you want to put forth. Like I'll even ask them like, what do you, when someone looks at their image, what do you want that to say? What do they look at it? Do they see confident? Do they see strength? Is it approachability? What are the things that you want it to project? Because we can make it project all those different, whatever those things are. And that makes them feel good too, because they know right off the bat, like, oh, this is what I've come here for. Like, there's a reason why we're doing this. It's more than just like stand in front of the light, click, you're done, like with that. So we find out what it is they want. I also find that out because then I have my cues that I'll give people. So say I've had a lot of people in neuroscience lately that are in specifically on for Alzheimer's. So they have it with Alzheimer's. I happen to know that it's amyloid plaques, like that with it there. So when I need them to really look happy and really look genuine, I'll say, you've just figured out a way to make it so that all amyloid plaques go away. And then you can see their face lights up, so or if it's a salesperson, I'm like, quarterly earnings are in, they're better than they ever expected, like stuff like that, of cues that are very, very specific to what they're doing. If it's an ARIS student, applying for a residency, I'll say, okay, let's tell me, what is the place that is your dream residency? Tell me what's the place. Okay. We're thinking of that moment. You open up that letter, or nowadays it's an email. Open up that email and you see it, and you see that name on there. Or, like you're treating that patient in this situation, those types of things, of getting them out of their head of the moment of, oh, dear God, I'm in front of the camera. What do I do? And instead put them in a happy place with it there. So that's a really big part of it for me. The other part is being a cheerleader. That's what everybody usually says. And my assistant is the same way too, with it there, of that people say at the end, they're like, can I take you home with me and just put you in my pocket? Because I've never felt so good about myself as I do when I'm in front of there. And if you ever see the Austin Powers movie where he's like, yes, 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 like when in the shooting thing there, it's not too dissimilar from that. So like, I'm never negative with it. So say that once I do get them in there and they're posing, if it's not working, I'm not saying that's not working. Let's move on. Like my term I'd say would be like, oh, okay, great. That looks great. Let's now turn to this side, of that type of thing. So it's always keeping it happy and upbeat and always speaking and keeping that dialogue going. Because if you're just there and they're standing there looking like, and you're clicking away, but they don't know. And the cameras are now so quiet, they can't even necessarily hear that you're actually taking the picture. Yeah. So it is really nerve-wracking to people to be on the other side and not know if they're doing well. So if they're doing well, tell them they're doing well. Of like, great job, great. Oh, that looks great. Ones that have worked for me more recently that I've been for they're really quick and easy. If you go for if you want smile with no teeth, I often will say the thing of like James Bond, cool, that type of thing. But even then for women with it, because a lot of people are like, I can't smile with no teeth. It just doesn't work for me. I say, I want you to think of yummy, yummy chocolate and go, If you're going, like that and thinking of yummy chocolate, guess what? You've got a smile with it, and that works. So there are some little simple trick ones with it, but it's a lot of it is looking at the person. If it's the person that keeps talking about their kids, then I find out, what does your kid like to do? Oh, they've said soccer. So it's the same thing. I go, we're picturing Johnny has just gotten a goal. Woo, goal. Like I had one lady who said, she loved gin and tonics. No joke. Over and over again. We just kept being like, it's 5:00. It's time for a gin and tonic. One lady who loved cats so much. So whenever she did something really right, I'd go, it's perfect. Yes, that's perfect. I don't know. So it's connecting with people on different levels of it. And then last but not least is the thing of, by virtue of showing them that I am being precise with it. I'm making sure that their hair is such that I've gone in, I've gotten a clamp at the back of their shirt so that it's tight enough that it's with it. They're going, no photographer has ever done this for me before. And I go, that's why our pictures look that much better. I said, when you go to a magazine shoot, they're going to do this level of care to somebody. You want that. I said, if you just took any celebrity and just slap jab stuck them in front of the thing there, they're not going to look great either. With it. So showing them that care, that you do care of how they look with the stuff. And it's not making them feel bad about it of like, oh, your shirt's all wrinkly. Ugh, like you go, that's okay. Shirts are wrinkly. I'm here to fix this, that type of thing. So that's for that. That's for the longer ones. For shorter ones, it has to be much, much faster with it. So the key thing I find is that you can find something to compliment of somebody, and a genuine compliment for just about anybody. One moment, I'm just seeing. I just realized my phone is going. It will go off in a second. You can't hear it. Okay. Oh, all right. Then we'll leave it. So you can find something to genuinely compliment about just about anybody. You don't have to do it every single person who comes through, but particularly if they're looking like they're, unsure, not, feeling good about themselves. Can go, oh, I love that watch. It's particularly easy because I'm a female. As a male, you have a difficulty of not coming off, not saying you personally, Rafael, but just guys, you have to be careful of not coming off as creepy or hitting on the person. So you have to pick something that is distinctly non-sexual, to be hitting on. It can be, I feel like it's probably pretty safe for a male photographer to say, oh, your eyes are beautiful. They're going to sparkle in this light, something like that. You have beautiful bone structure
to it, right? That's what I
have a tweak. I'm never going like, look at this sexy mama, like who's in front of me of that type of thing. I will at some point say a saucy minx, like give me the saucy minx, like her or whatever. But overall with it there it's, oh, that scarf is great. I love your watch. That's great. Oh, your smile. It's fantastic. Anything that, but it all has to be legit. I'm never going to say like your hair looks amazing and it looks like hell, like that, because it needs to be something that they are now feeling good about themselves. It's because you have to sit there and think coming in for a headshot like that is a place of vulnerability for people. And so making them feel good about it. If they're saying, I'm not photogenic, go, great. That's my favorite type of person. I'm going to show you how great you can look. Things along those lines. So that's kind of what makes it. Sorry, I talked for a long time.
No, it's all good. It's pretty amazing. So thank you for sharing all those like little details, because it's gonna help a lot of people out there as well, right? Because I think, and that's why I want to kind of focus on this, because I know that's the biggest challenge for most of headshot photographers, to connect with people. And I remember when I started, because as you remember, as a wedding photographer, like you don't really connect, even like when you shoot the couples, or like the bride and the groom, you're connecting with them, but other than that, you just like walking around and then getting the shots, right? So this
Yeah, see, I did back then. I would get all the names of all the bridal party and stuff in advance, and I would get pictures of them and make flashcards, so I would know even all the bridal party members, so I could talk to each of them and stuff and connect.
But in general, like
yeah,
I found like was completely different dynamics during the wedding, and the headshots are more personal, where you have to connect with the person. There's no other way around to make this whole thing work. So the next question, what I want to ask you is, because you've been shooting headshots for the last 10 years, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I guess I started in 2010. Wow, we're coming up on
more.
Yeah, wow.
See, that's amazing. So what was the biggest
Oh, sorry. I apologize. 2010 was when we moved here. Started headshots was majorly doing headshots was 2018 was the start. I apologize. Brain is gone. Yeah, 2018 was when I started to focus on headshots.
So what was the biggest improvement over the years, which you've noticed? Because I know like when we starting, we focus on different things. We focus on equipment, lighting, all this stuff. Then we're getting into this, body language, face expressions, connecting with people. So what was the biggest kind of like the biggest thing you overcome as a headshot photographer? And was this like moment where you were like, oh my God, like I got this, like I now understand this on much deeper level?
I would say, can I pick two?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, two.
Five if you want.
Pick five. I would say the first step by far is getting at least half decent lighting. You don't have to there's when you go up a level to getting I'm actually going to be doing a presentation for B&H with Westcott called that'll be going it's for volume photography, but I'm going it from the lighting from the simple to simply sublime is what I'm calling it. And so of going through the variety of different lighting situations you can do for headshots, particularly in volume situations specifically with it there. Because there are so many ways to light up people. Like I remember when I first look at it and it'd be like, put a light at 45-degree angle, boom, like that. Like I can tell you right now, the way I'm set up with lit, I'm not being lit just at a 45-degree angle with a thing like that. I don't want like crazy shadows on my face and stuff. There are times where I want crazy, amazing dramatic shadows on stuff, but not on a lady's headshot with it there. So knowing how to control that light and get the look that you want, at least half decent, that makes the first big leap. The second big leap is knowing how to be aware of all those things of positioning, because at first you're just focusing on the light and you're not thinking so much about it, but that you realize you're like, oh crud, my camera wasn't high enough or low enough. The stuff was out of the way. If only they had just been like turned a little more or turned a little less, those things of getting that finesse. So being aware of those things and even getting in your head exactly what you want the person to look like, because that's, as I'm posing someone, I'm trying to get them to a certain point. Sometimes something will come about organically and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's great too, but in my head, there's exactly a picture that I want of them. And that's when I get excited. You'll see like different shot. And then you'll see like a span in my thing of like 30 frames taken. I'm like, yes. Like with it there, like, you got it. Hooray. And they feel so proud when they've reached that moment there with it. So being able to know what looks good for people is huge. And then the last step of like what really kind of, really leveling it up is then getting your lighting really, really good. Like the type of thing that when you look at it, the image isn't just good, like you're getting clients or whatever. It's that I call it scroll stopping is the image. which Rafal has accomplished very well with it. It's something that it's either that is so it's very unusual that takes you out of the norm of it, but at the same time, it's not just like, oh, this is weird and I'm stopping. It's like it's really good. So doing something along the lines of what you do versus like of really perfecting kind of like the Hurley lighting. I've been working on learning a type of thing that John Meadows does of this super close up, intense portrait there that with people that it's not for everybody by all means. Like it is not something that every client's going to go for, but some just are like, like I didn't know I could look like this, and it's amazing. Yeah. So having those different elements come together.
Yeah, I remember, speaking of that, I have this like interesting story. Back in the days, I purchased Peter Hurley tutorial from F-Stoppers, and he was talking about his, chopping the head off right on the top. Like he was just like this big thing for him.
And I used to hate that. Now I love it.
Yeah, but I was inspired by this, right? I was like, yeah, he's right. Like, it's all about the eyes. Like, he's completely onto something. I'm like, this is just amazing. Looks different. Looks really unique. And I remember I had this photo shoot at the medical clinic. So there was like, I don't know, 20 nurses, 5 doctors, whatever. And I'm like, I'm gonna just go full Peter Hurley on them and like, get this done. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so we had to do the whole reshoot, and they were like so upset.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did you just crop the head off? I'm like, it looks cool. And like, no. And nowadays I would just do the AI and it would be done with. But
yeah, I've added on exactly.
Yeah. Nowadays, that's I had to do the whole reshoot and stuff like that. But yeah, as you said, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. But you also have to understand who the client is and what they're looking for.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about business. How your business changed over the years and how you approach your headshot business nowadays. Because I know a lot of people are interested to hear how you're running your business. Because if you are a professional, then you have to make a living. You have to make this whole thing works. Things getting more expensive, and how you can convince people to pay you extra dollars for headshots, because I think there's still this kind of stigma around headshots that they should be cheap, they should be like inexpensive, and as soon as people start hearing, okay, you're charging $3.99 just for the session, some of them losing their mind.
They're like, what? Yeah.
Headshot.
Yeah. And also I will mention, it's funny that you ask about the business stuff, because between both, for other photographers, enough people ask me this, and then even my clients, I do a small business starter thing for that I have as a package thing there, because I've then, by virtue of knowing my own stuff well enough of website design and how to make a business successful, all these things are applicable across the thing. So I've actually recently made a whole education platform that I'm working towards of helping people with that. So for me, with it there, when I first started out, when I was just doing weddings, luckily I at least had a background enough and knowing in tech of web design and basic SEO. My dissertation was looking at the effects of, the different one. I was about to say other one was looking at the role of consumers in the consumer healthcare driven movement. So it meant I had to look at how well people were using things online. So I had a basis for that at least to go for. So back in the 2010s, you could get away with just the bare minimum of having any SEO knowledge and being able to pop up on Google fairly well. And my whole business model was just make money. Yay, have fun. Yay, I'm doing this. People are paying me. Like there was no, it was very fair. There was no strategy out there. Like there was nothing targeted at all that was going on. It was just like, put stuff on Facebook. I'm having the time of my life doing this as a job. Woo. Okay. Not that's the way a lot of us start with it. We're just so happy. It's something you're doing, a passion. And part of it is, it's even hard for me now. I'll say to my clients all the time, like, I'm partially a terrible business person because I'm like the least pressure person, like of business on it there. I literally the other day forgot on this, this is a terrible thing, for a nonprofit that I care about really well, I'd forgotten to bill them. And so they were like, thank you so much for donating your services. And I was like, I guess I donated my services now. This is what I get for not following the reminder on my 17 hats to invoice them. Yeah, so be that as it may. So going back to it. So how I priced myself and modeled myself. Well, when I first got out into headshot land with it there, I had not even imposter syndrome. I knew where I stood of it. When I'd look at other people's works and stuff there, I was initially nowhere near the top echelon of my market whatsoever. I knew I was a good photographer, but I wouldn't look at it and go, yeah, someone would pay me oodles for it. So I started out at, I think it was 150 for a session, and that included 3 images that were retouched. That's untenable, with it there. You can't continue really a business model of doing that. That works for the very first little beginning thing. So then I at least thought back to how I did my weddings and how I got up to the higher tier of wedding stuff there. And I remember Jasmine Starr had said every 3rd wedding she did as she started, she would then raise her prices another $100. So that was my original intent, was that I was going to raise the prices, but I was so scared because there were so many people out there that were charging low. I wasn't getting tons and tons of clients at the beginning with it there. And I had that super supportive mother of photography back in the day was going who in their right mind is even pay $150 for 3 headshots? That's crazy. That's so expensive. And now every time I make a big sale, I text her. I'm like, here, you wouldn't believe it now with it there. But so I invested in myself of the, getting better in my skill. So that meant practicing. It meant really listening to the constructive criticism instead of going and looking and being like, well, my stuff's good. I don't know what you're talking about, Peter Hurley. It's like, no, the man knows what he's talking about. So do the mentors on there. Listen to it. It hurts, hearing you think you've done well, and then you're like, I totally botched the color. You're right. But working on myself of getting better. So that's a huge thing, because a lot of people will just say raise your prices, that'll do it. Well, if your work is crud, no one's going to pay for it. If it's total crud, it needs to be, it at least needs to be good for you making more. So the first steps is, if you're overall for business, make sure you have your Google business profile set up properly going through it there. Second, of making a good website. Just having a website is not enough. If you want a free resource on it, you can go to my website, and I have a thing on it. Yeah, and I can put a link of it there, of an article of how to make it SEO and user friendly with it there, of designing for things, of making it, because you have 2 different types of people. You have infinite scrollers who want everything all on one page, and you have menu lovers. You need to design for both. You also need to be designing for the bots and what it is, but you also don't want to have your site be looking like something that is only just designed for a bot and isn't, because a bot isn't deciding to make their purchase and to book you in the end. Having those strong images, so many different factors that go into having a really strong website there. Another thing that was massive for me of a difference was adding in 17 hats to my workflow. Before, I had used QuickBooks with it there. It just kept getting more and more expensive. This allowed me to do online booking. I'm one of those that my pricing is completely transparent. It's right on my site. A lot of people do the opt-in type of thing of putting it out there, which is, if it works for you in that model, fine. For me, I actually put a plugin on my own website to watch what people's actions were doing with it. Once I switched it to that type of opt-in thing, I watched, and they'd just be clicking everywhere trying to find price and that. And, a lot of people feel like, okay, I have to have it so that I can call and explain to them why I'm so great, that why it's worth my stuff. My theory is your website and your work should be good enough. You don't have to be on a phone call with somebody to talk them into it. I don't want to ever have somebody having buyer's remorse or feeling like they were talked into something they needed. I have people that at that point, they're calling and they're going, this is what I want. I realize the value of it. Sometimes you might have them and they'll be like, can you explain just a little more? And I'll say it and they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds like it. But overall, they need to be able to get the information they need right there on your site, and particularly make it as easy as possible, because it is not a thing that is like your family pictures or a wedding thing, that it really is there. While at the end of the day, I feel the images we provide are more than just a commodity, it is still, when people are first initially usually purchasing it, it's like it's a commodity. It's not an emotional purchase that they're getting, that you can do it by the heartstrings of people with it there. You
Yeah.
have to make it easy for them to be able to just see the information and go. So
Perfect. So how are you market yourself?
yeah,
It's three things, or there's any additional stuff you do to, push your business out?
that's a great question. So I initially did nothing more than just base level SEO type of stuff, and business was good. I also then started doing LinkedIn, doing the LinkedIn network mining type of thing. If you look into stuff of John Meadows and Trevor Walker, they talk about this type of thing a lot there. Everybody has different approaches to it, but it's frankly, that if you're doing headshots, LinkedIn is your target audience. Like, you should be active on that, getting stuff on there. And then the key thing is, you're not going like, here's my stuff, look at what I did. It's like about making the posts about the people that you're photographing. It's not yay me, it's always yay them, so that they're then basically wanting to repost and be an evangelist for you. Like, one example I love of this that happened was, I photographed somebody who, because lots of like billion-dollar corporations have offices all over the world. Okay. So I photographed someone who was local to here, to a large corporation. The person happened to be bald. One of the things I pride myself on is photographing bald people really well. They're not getting the shiny spot on top of their head. They're not, like, they look good. And so he goes and he posts it on LinkedIn there. And then the head of sales of his multi-billion-dollar corporation sees this and says, get me whoever that person is and bring them to me. As it turns out, they had 6 different headshot photographers in there in the previous 2 months in Pittsburgh. And like half of their main giant salespeople on their team were bald. And so they flew me out to Pittsburgh to go and photograph the sales team. That was my first like really, really big money headshot job, was off of something like that. And that was because someone saw it, his boss on LinkedIn saw the different stuff there. It matters. And it's free. You don't need premium to have it do it. It's just being smart.
LinkedIn is really expensive when it comes to premiums, right? Like, this is just,
yeah, it was $99 a month. I at one point turned it on. I was just like, I'm not even using this. It's not worth it. And then, so just do the free LinkedIn. And then the other was that then come November, December of 2023, it was funny. 2022, November, December, I made like more than half my revenues for the whole year. And then that November, December was dead as a doornail, 2023. And I was like, what is going on? So I try first doing like Google ads and stuff. 0 return, literally 0 useful returns. And then I come to realize, wow, before, with whatever the Google algorithms of like 2010 that I was using, I easily was found. Now I'm on like page
X.
like 12, no one's seeing me, no one with it. And so at that point I was like, I have got to hunker down. So I did not hire anybody. I hired me. I went and I got Yoast Premium, which if you have a WordPress based site, totally works for it. If you have something like Squarespace, which it's funny because people be like, but you don't recommend new people getting Squarespace or not getting WordPress. And I'm like, if you're not a techie person, don't do a WordPress site. Like, don't. If you want to be able to fix things. Pardon? Say it again.
So what is the reason behind it? Because like I've been just hearing again a bunch of different opinions on that.
Yeah. So overall, because again, I do a lot of website design for people as well, is that if you are a person that, first of all, as a photographer, you should be regularly changing the images on your site. Like anytime you've got new stuff that comes up, new content, if the algorithm changes and stuff, you need to be able to change the verbiage and the content and give fresh pictures and stuff on your site. If it is above your mental capacity, or just like not even mental capacity, that's a bad term to use. If it is above what you want to do of the level of it, and you're sitting there going like, this is complex, looking at the back end of WordPress, even if it's a WYSIWYG theme that you've put onto it there, what you see is what you get. It's still much more complex than, say, a Squarespace on the back end there. For people, and it's just vastly more intimidating. So much so that normally they'll hire someone to make them a WordPress site and then they'll just never touch it. and never touching it is not a good idea. WordPress, you need to usually be able to go in and do the updates on your theme, on the back end of what it's running, so many different things. So that's where I'd say, unless you're a person who is comfortable with that, you don't have to be like an HTML genius with it, but you have to be comfortable doing more hands-on with it there. Versus on a Squarespace with it there, that if you go, I do suggest, and all these things, never just start from scratch and be like, I'm an artist, I'm going to make my site, with it. Go with a template. There's a reason why there are people who make these templates. There are people who are graphic designers who are good at what they do, and that things go together nicely with it there. Have it all come and work like as it should. If you go with that on like a Squarespace, it's going to be a responsive design that's going to look good on mobile. And it's also going to, with stuff, you don't have to worry about it so much of that. And they're keeping things up to date for you. So it's all in one place. But if you are sitting there and you're in, say, LA or New York, and you're in a competitive market for what you want to do, there is no question. The SEO tools that are going to be available to you and trying to get front page on Google and stuff like that are going to be stronger on WordPress than you're going to find on Squarespace. You can definitely still do added things of go in there and put in your meta tags and put in your alt terms for your images and stuff. But as far as what I've seen with just the different sites and stuff, I don't know how it works with it. I ended up getting Yoast Premium with it. Somehow I went from being like page 13 to page 1 in like less than a week with it there of following the different stuff there. And now I get my winter reports, and I basically, for the main things that I care about most with the headshots, I hover between 1 to 3 of the spots on it there now. That's really huge with it there for me. I don't rank as high as I'd like to on events, but I sit there and I go, I want, for me overall, the one I prefer doing more is doing headshots versus just doing corporate events. My rate is higher per hour. I make more with that than I do with corporate events.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so my last question to you is, thank you actually for this insight, because a lot of people don't realize how complex that is, right? And a lot of people think, especially photographers who are starting off, it's like, as long as I have a good images, I can kind of kick off the business, and this is just like the top of the iceberg, to be honest.
And that last thing, be sure I always give the example to people. They're like, I have to post like 400 different beautiful pictures, and I'm like, you need to have your very best, best of the best. If you go to Gary Hughes's page, you'll see like something like only 6 headshots. It's crazy, but they're all really good. If you have 6 that are amazing headshots mixed in amongst 20 others that are mediocre, you're not going to stand out. So you're better making them and make them big. Little tiny pictures, not good. Like, use your hero images.
Yeah, absolutely. I call those sales images, and I've learned this from weddings. I don't know if you experienced that. I'm sure you did. I remember when I was meeting with my clients and I was showing them, let's say, albums, whatever, and they were picking on specific images and like, oh my God, I love this image, right? So then I was just like, try to like see which images are like, the most noticeable by the clients. And then how I was just like, putting together my albums for sales. And this is exactly the same when it comes to headshot photography. I found like, people see certain images, and that's how they make the decision, right? And I think photographers, I always ask my clients, like, if you went to my website, which images you like, whatever, and they could specifically pick, I like these images and that specific image. And that's why I hire you, whatever, right?
So I did have one other business one. I just hit me that I realized that was different. Was that overall, again, the pricing thing. So switching it up so that the session fee is no longer coupled with the images. And I've done that pretty much exclusively up until very recently. I then started because now my session fee is $390 and then $395 per image. You wouldn't be getting out basically except for spending almost $800 for like a single image thing. But there are enough people in the area of Boston, and I'm sure in your town or wherever, that don't need the giant extensive, session. My session fee is that you're going and you have up to like 3 hours doing lots of backgrounds, lots of things. There are some people who really just need one image. There's a lot of people who actually need that. And so what I've done is through 17 hats, I've made it so that only as far as 2 weeks out, because most of my people who are my much bigger, longer session people tend to book much further out with it there. So to fill up any extra spaces in my thing, I've added in an express session. My express session is 30 minutes. So it's 20 minutes of max of the shooting, 10 minutes of going through the images right there. And that includes one retouched image with it there. They can only book that within a 2-week window. Anything further out, I say, if you really want to be able to secure your spot, you got to get a regular session thing, or you just got to wait and hope with that there. And it's been fantastic because on like a single day, I'll get same day walk-in things and I'll be like, oh, there's 450. And then what's even better is that on top of that, you have all these different execs from very high level companies that will still come in from that, because it's not inexpensive. They're sitting there, they're looking at it going, this is still a very good shot that I'm getting, with it. They see the difference. But so that then gives me that same type of exposure of that, having the bald guy, and that that you're going, okay, well, I've had people from Deloitte come in, and that now they go, oh, I'm going to go back and talk to the people at Deloitte about seeing you come and be a photographer with us here. So it is actually not only is it giving me additional income, it's a business investment in itself, because every time they come in one of those sessions, then I mention at the end, because they'll say, this is amazing. I go, oh yeah, you know what? If all your execs sit there and they look at it and they go, this is great, I wish I had this, let them know I can come right to your office. You can? Oh my God, I'm gonna tell people, and that's the way it goes. So it's advertising.
Absolutely. So my last question is, what would be your advice to someone who is starting off? They see that they have some potential to be a good hatchet photographer, and would be one advice you would want to give it to them?
One advice. Oof. I'd say find a mentor. Okay. Find a good mentor with it. Someone that you like their style, someone that cares, hopefully cares about your journey as well on it there going forward. You can't necessarily always be lucky of that, because sometimes, you have to find a paid mentor. Not everybody's just going to be like, I'm your buddy and I'm your pal and going to be nice and stuff on that. That kind of is what spawned me to make my education thing, because I had so many buddies and pals of me helping that my husband was like, you're not getting enough sleep anymore. You're helping people everywhere. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, but find somebody who does care with it there. Find a style that you like and try to learn how to do that well. And then it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do exactly the way that person does, but at least start to learn to master one, instead of just, and take the time to really invest in doing that. And don't just go like, I'm doing headshots and put it out there, because if you just right away put stuff up and it's not particularly good, and you're going to be possibly ruining your potential street cred, of it. You don't want to have a bad review and stuff going for you at the beginning, when you could have just taken more time of doing some free sessions and really working on your craft, doing it. And if anything, do free sessions, include one free image at the beginning when you're doing it, of getting these things, and then make additional images be a cost of, like, say, $50 an image, something along those lines when you're first starting out, so that you're getting that experience with it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this interview. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I did.
Pleasure talking to you. Thank you for all the insights.
Sure.
There's so much, and I think a lot of people will learn a lot from it. I will link all those informations about you into the description, so people can kind of check what you do. I know you have also some educational stuff as well. And I hope we will be able to do this again soon. It seems like this whole industry is really progressing over the last few years, and I think it's kind of on this path that is going to just become really big.
We need a headshots conference just for that. Yeah.
Peter put something right, like he had this little event. Well, not little headshot. What was this?
Headshot mania
Headshot man.
back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, but we need a bigger one for
Yeah.
sure. Perfect.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch, and yeah, thank you for your time.
Rafal, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for inspiring and helping educate so many headshot photographers out there. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Have a good one.